The traffic light on Fifth Avenue burned red, like a warning no one wanted to read. Dominic Hale sat in the back seat of his black sedan, the city's reflection sliding across the tinted glass like a moving painting. Manhattan at night always looked expensive. Clean lines, sharp lights, quiet power. The kind of place where men like him didn't lose control. Beside him, Vanessa Cole adjusted the diamond clasp on her coat, her reflection calm, flawless. She had just come from a private engagement dinner at a hotel overlooking Central Park. Politicians, investors, smiles that meant contracts, not happiness. "In 3 days," Vanessa said softly, "the announcement goes public. After that, there's no turning back." Dominic didn't answer right away. His fingers rested loosely against his knee, still feeling the echo of champagne glasses clinking in his ears. He had survived shootouts, betrayals, federal investigations, but something about the way she said no, turning back, made his chest tighten. The car slowed. Red light. The driver eased to a stop at the crosswalk, and then Dominic saw her. She stepped off the curb hesitantly, as if the street itself might turn against her. A woman in a worn gray coat, hair pulled back too quickly, one hand gripping a child's backpack, the other holding 2 small hands at once. Twins. A boy on her left, a boy on her right. They moved in sync, like they had practiced surviving together. Dominic's breath stopped. It wasn't the woman that shattered him first. It was the way one of the boys turned his head, just for a second. Curious, unafraid. The face looking back at him was his own. Same dark eyes, same sharp brow, same expression Dominic had seen in old photos of himself at that age, before the world taught him what power cost. The city noise faded. Horns, footsteps, voices, gone. "What is it?" Vanessa asked, following his stare. Dominic didn't hear her. The woman finally looked up. Their eyes met. Evelyn Moore froze mid-step. For 6 years, she had built her life around avoiding this moment. Different routes, different hours, different neighborhoods. She had told herself Manhattan was big enough to swallow the past whole. She was wrong. Her fingers tightened around the boy's hands. Not fear, not surprise. Recognition. Pure, sick certainty. The light was still red. No one moved. Dominic felt something crack open in his chest, slow and violent. A question he had buried deep clawed its way to the surface, demanding air. How? Evelyn pulled the boys forward, forcing herself to walk. One step, then another. Her shoulders stayed straight, but her face drained of color. She did not run. That scared him more than anything. The light turned green. The driver glanced back. "Mr. Hale?" Dominic's voice came out rough, unfamiliar. "Follow them." Vanessa's head snapped toward him. "Dominic, what are you talking about?" But the car was already moving. Behind them, Evelyn felt the hum of an engine creeping too close. Ahead of her, the twins crossed the street, unaware that everything they knew had just shifted, and none of them realized yet. This wasn't a reunion. It was the beginning of a war that would cost blood, power, and the truth none of them were ready to face. Evelyn Moore did not look back. She didn't dare. Her grip tightened around the twins' hands as they reached the opposite sidewalk. The city moved on as if nothing had happened, cars flowing, lights changing, strangers brushing past. But inside Evelyn, everything was collapsing at once. "Mom?" Noah asked, his small fingers squeezing hers. "Why are you holding so tight?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just don't let go, okay?" They walked faster. Every step felt rehearsed, like muscle memory kicking in from years of living carefully. She cut left instead of right, chose the busier street instead of the quieter one. Glass storefronts reflected her pale face back at her, older than 30, tired in a way sleep never fixed. She could still feel him, not his eyes, his presence. 6 years ago, Evelyn had learned that danger didn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrived silently, in expensive cars and tailored coats. The twins chattered behind her, arguing softly about which cartoon they'd watch when they got home. Their voices grounded her, pulled her forward. She focused on the rhythm of their shoes on concrete, the weight of their backpacks, the familiar ache in her lower back from double shifts and single motherhood. By the time they reached their apartment building in Queens, her hands were shaking. Inside, she locked the door, then checked it again. Only then did she sink down against it, pressing her forehead to the cool wood. The boys dropped their bags and headed for the couch, like nothing had changed. To them, life was homework, cereal dinners, and bedtime stories. They didn't know about the man at the crosswalk. They didn't know the name she never spoke. Evelyn went to the small kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. It spilled over the rim because her hands wouldn't steady. He saw us. That was the thought that wouldn't leave. She had built this life brick by brick. New address, new job, new routine. She had learned how to be invisible, how to survive without being seen. And in one red light, it had all unraveled. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She let it ring once, twice. Then it stopped. A moment later, a message appeared. Evelyn Moore, we need to talk. No signature, no explanation. From the living room, Liam called out, Mom, can we have pancakes tonight? Evelyn closed her eyes. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't coincidence. It was a warning. And whatever had just found her was not planning to let her go again. Caleb Voss did not believe in coincidences. From the 42nd floor of his office tower on Park Avenue, the city looked obedient, ordered, predictable. That was how he liked it. He stood with his back to the window, scrolling through footage on a tablet, his expression calm in a way that unsettled everyone who worked for him. Play it again, he said. The clip rewound. A black sedan stopping at a crosswalk, pedestrians passing. Then, a woman in a gray coat stepping into frame, holding the hands of two small boys. Caleb's eyes sharpened. Pause. The image froze on the face of the child, who had glanced toward the street. The resemblance was unmistakable. Caleb smiled slowly. So, he murmured, the past finally decided to breathe again. Behind him, one of his men shifted uncomfortably. You think Hale noticed? Caleb didn't turn around. Dominic notices everything. That's what makes him useful. He tapped the screen once, then locked it. And dangerous. He walked back to his desk and picked up a pen, rolling it between his fingers as if thinking through a math problem. 6 years ago, Evelyn Moore had been a loose end, an inconvenient witness, nothing more. Young, scared, easy to silence without blood. Or so he had thought. She disappeared clean, the man said. New job, new address, no contact. Caleb sat down, folding his hands. Women like her don't disappear. They hide. His gaze drifted to a second folder on the desk. Inside were old reports, sealed statements, hospital logs, a name circled in red ink. Evelyn Moore. She was never the problem, Caleb continued calmly. The children are. The room went quiet. If Dominic believes those boys are his, the man said carefully, he could lose focus. Caleb nodded. Or grow a conscience. Both are unacceptable. He stood again and walked toward the window, watching traffic crawl far below. Power was fragile. It cracked the moment emotion entered the room. Send someone to verify her routine, he said. School, work, who she trusts. And Hale? Caleb's reflection stared back at him in the glass. Let him wonder. Men make mistakes when they're confused. He turned, his voice lowering. But if she speaks, if she remembers too much. A pause. We remind her why silence kept her alive. The man hesitated. The kids? Caleb's eyes were cold. Calculating, not cruel. Worse than that. Children are leverage, he said. Nothing more. As the city lights flickered on behind him, Caleb Voss made his decision. The woman who crossed the street had just reopened a chapter that was never meant to be read again. And this time, he intended to finish it. Vanessa Cole had learned early that power did not announce itself. It whispered. She sat alone in the back seat of the town car as it glided through Manhattan, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Dominic had asked for time after the incident at the Crosswalk. Time, he'd said, as if time were something men like him ever lacked. Vanessa knew better. She opened her tablet and pulled up the private report she'd requested less than an hour ago. When you were raised around politicians, you learned which doors didn't need knocking. The name appeared on the screen. Evelyn Moore. Vanessa's lips pressed together as lines of information scrolled past. Age, employment, address in Queens, 2 children, no father listed. That detail made her pause. She zoomed in. Twins, born premature, hospitalized for weeks. Vanessa leaned back slightly, the city lights flickering across her face. So that was it. She didn't feel anger, not yet. What she felt was irritation, the sharp kind that came when an unexpected variable entered a carefully constructed equation. Dominic had never been sentimental. He didn't chase ghosts, and yet tonight, something had shaken him. She had seen it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes followed that woman across the street. Vanessa scrolled further. There it was. An old incident report. 6 years ago. A warehouse fire. 1 fatality. 1 witness who had given a partial statement and then vanished before testifying. Evelyn Moore. Vanessa exhaled slowly. You're not just an ex, she murmured to herself. You're a liability. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from one of her contacts. She's clean on paper, but fragile. Financial stress, medical debt, no legal representation. Vanessa smiled faintly. Fragile people broke easily. She closed the file and stared out the window as the car passed beneath glowing billboards and steel towers. In 3 days, the engagement would be announced. Cameras, headlines, stability. She needed this marriage, not for love, but for position. Dominic Hale was a bridge, and bridges were meant to be crossed, not worshipped. If Evelyn Moore thought she could simply exist in the same city as Dominic Hale without consequence, she was mistaken. Vanessa tapped out a message with careful precision. Dig deeper, she typed. School records, child services, anything unresolved. She hit send, then added a second instruction. And keep Dominic out of it. The car slowed at a red light. Vanessa caught her reflection in the glass. Calm, elegant, unthreatened. This wasn't jealousy, it was strategy. And by the time Evelyn realized she was being watched, Vanessa intended to already be 3 moves ahead. The knock came at exactly 7:18 a.m. Not loud, not urgent, polite. Evelyn knew it was bad the moment she heard it. She froze in the kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee, the other steadying a plate of toast she hadn't touched. The twins were at the small table, still in pajamas, arguing over who got the last strawberry. Mom, Liam said. Someone's at the door. I know, Evelyn replied quietly. Her heart began to race, not with panic, but with recognition. This was the kind of knock that didn't belong to neighbors, or friends, or delivery drivers. She opened the door. A woman stood there with a clipboard and a practiced smile. Mid-40s, sensible coat, calm eyes. Ms. Moore? She asked. I'm Marion Brooks, Child Protective Services. The words landed like a blow to the chest. Evelyn swallowed. Is there a problem? Nothing urgent, Marion said smoothly. Just a routine welfare check. We received an anonymous concern. Anonymous? Evelyn stepped aside, every muscle in her body screaming. Of course! Marion entered, her gaze sweeping the apartment with quiet efficiency. The couch with a loose cushion, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. The small bedroom the twins shared, neat but cramped. Boys, Evelyn said, forcing her voice to stay steady. This is Ms. Brooks. The twins smiled politely. Too politely. Marion crouched to their level. "Hi, I'm here to make sure everything's okay." "It is," Noah said quickly. "Mom takes care of us." Evelyn's chest tightened. Marion stood and made a note on her clipboard. "I see you work nights." "Yes," Evelyn said. "I always arrange supervision." "And the children's father?" Evelyn hesitated. "Just a fraction too long." "He's not involved." Marion nodded, writing again. "I'll need to follow up," she said gently, "just to ensure long-term stability. Medical records, school attendance, emergency contacts." Evelyn forced a smile. "Of course." But inside, fear spread cold and sharp. This wasn't concern. It was pressure. After Marion left, Evelyn locked the door and slid down against it, breath shaking. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Unknown number, one message. "See? Systems work faster than guns." Evelyn stared at the screen. For the first time in years, the danger wasn't hidden in shadows. It was wearing a badge. And it was coming for her children. Dominic Hale didn't sleep that night. The city stretched beneath his penthouse windows, glowing and restless. But his mind was fixed on one image. The boy at the crosswalk, staring back at him with a face that felt stolen from his own past. By morning, he had already made the call. Not to a friend, not to Vanessa, to a private lab that owed him favors. The sample had been easy. A forgotten juice box cup from the back seat of his car, brushed by one of the twins when Evelyn had stumbled during the street crossing. Careless. Human. Enough. Dominic watched the skyline as the sun rose, his reflection faint in the glass. He told himself this was about certainty, about control. But it wasn't. It was about hope, and how dangerous hope could be. The results arrived that afternoon. He stood alone in his office, tablet resting on the desk, unopened for a full minute before he forced himself to look. Not a paternal match. The words blurred, then sharpened. Dominic exhaled slowly, as if bracing against a physical blow. His jaw clenched. Something inside him collapsed, quiet and absolute. So that was it. The resemblance was coincidence. A cruel trick of genetics and memory. A ghost his mind had created because he wanted meaning where there was none. He felt foolish, weak, worse, relieved, because now he could walk away. Vanessa was right. The past was the past. Whatever he'd seen at that crosswalk was no longer his responsibility. He forwarded the report to his secure folder and shut the tablet off. At the same time, across the city, Evelyn sat at her small kitchen table, staring at her phone as it vibrated in her hand. A message had come from an unfamiliar number earlier that day. DNA test completed. Not his children. No greeting, no signature. Her chest tightened as if the air had been pulled from the room. She should have felt safe. She didn't. Instead, dread settled in her bones, because she knew, deep down, that Dominic would believe this, that he would let go. And once he did, there would be no shield left between her and the people who had finally found her. She looked toward the living room, where the twins sat coloring, their heads bent close together, unaware of how fragile their world had become. "Mom," Liam said without looking up, "are we in trouble?" Evelyn forced herself to smile. "No," she said softly, "we're just alone again." Across Manhattan, Dominic poured himself a drink he didn't need, and neither of them knew yet. The result in his hand was a lie, and the truth was already being used against them both. The rain started without warning. Evelyn noticed it only because the windshield blurred faster than her wipers could clear it. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her pulse ticking loudly in her ears, as Queen Street stretched ahead, slick and unfamiliar in the dark. She should have stayed home. That thought came too late. The twins were with Elena for the night, Evelyn's one small mercy. She had promised herself she'd just drive to the pharmacy and back. Normal errands, normal life. That was how you proved you weren't afraid. The headlights appeared behind her suddenly. Too close, too steady. Her stomach dropped. She turned right. The car followed. Left, still there. Evelyn's breath became shallow. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She pressed the gas, just a little. The engine responded, but the road narrowed ahead, construction cones forcing traffic into a single lane. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The headlights surged. Then, impact. Metal screamed as her car was clipped from the side, sending it skidding across wet asphalt. Evelyn screamed as the world spun, her shoulder slamming into the door, pain exploding down her arm. The car jolted, slammed into the curb, and finally stopped with a violent shudder. Silence followed. Rain. Steam. Her own ragged breathing. Get up, she told herself. You have to get up. Her door wouldn't open. A shadow moved outside the car. Panic surged, sharp and absolute. Evelyn fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with rain and blood. The screen cracked as it slipped from her grasp. The shadow came closer. Then another sound cut through the rain. An engine, fast, purposeful. Headlights flared as a second vehicle pulled up hard behind hers. A door slammed. Voices, urgent, angry. Back away from the car. The shadow retreated. Evelyn's vision blurred as the door was yanked open from the outside. Cold air rushed in. A man crouched beside her, his face tense but focused. Ma'am, can you hear me? She nodded weakly, tears mixing with rain. I need you to stay with me, he said. You're safe now. Safe. The word felt unreal. As paramedics arrived and hands lifted her carefully onto a stretcher, Evelyn caught a glimpse of the road behind her. The first car, the one that had followed her, was gone. Vanished like it had never existed. At the hospital, under harsh white lights, Evelyn stared at the ceiling and finally allowed herself to cry. Because this hadn't been an accident. It had been a message, and whoever sent it was done waiting. Evelyn woke to the sound of machines. Soft beeps. Slow. Steady. Too calm for what she felt inside. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked fabric. Her shoulder throbbed, wrapped tight in bandages, and every breath sent a dull ache through her ribs. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the memory rushed back. The headlights, the impact, the shadow outside her door. She turned her head sharply. A man sat in the chair by the window, mid-30s, dark coat draped neatly over his arm. Calm posture, like someone used to waiting in places like this. He looked up the moment her eyes opened. Ms. Moore, he said quietly, you're awake. Her pulse spiked. Who are you? He didn't smile, didn't rush to reassure her. He stood slowly, hands visible, respectful. My name is Lucas Grant, he said. I'm with Federal Financial Investigations. Evelyn's mouth went dry. I don't talk to police, she said immediately. I'm not here about you, Lucas replied. I'm here because someone tried to kill you. The words landed heavy, undeniable. Evelyn swallowed hard. You don't know that. Lucas reached into his jacket and placed a folded photograph on the bedside table. Not too close, not aggressive. It showed her car from above. The angle was clean. Precise. That wasn't an accident, he said. No skid marks, no mechanical failure, just a calculated impact meant to scare you, or end you. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her voice was steady but fragile. Then why are you here? Lucas hesitated, just long enough to matter. Because the people who ordered it don't make mistakes, he said, and because your name has been buried in a case that was never truly closed. Her fingers curled into the blanket. I gave a statement years ago. Yes, Lucas said. Then it disappeared. Silence filled the room. You didn't vanish by accident, he continued. Someone helped erase you, and someone else has been watching ever since. Evelyn felt a cold realization settle in her chest. My kids. Lucas nodded once. They're safe, for now. For now, she snapped, panic breaking through. Ms. Moore, he said gently, the only reason you're still alive is because someone wants leverage, and the moment that changes— He didn't finish the sentence. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, fighting the urge to shake. Why help me? She asked quietly. Lucas met her gaze, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Because this time, he said, you're not the only one with something to lose. And in that moment, Evelyn understood. This wasn't rescue. It was recruitment. Vanessa Cole arrived without announcing herself. Evelyn was sitting upright in the hospital bed when the door opened again, this time without the quiet caution Lucas had shown. Vanessa stepped inside as if the room belonged to her, heels clicking softly against the floor, coat perfectly pressed despite the rain outside. You look worse than the photos, Vanessa said calmly. Evelyn stiffened. You shouldn't be here. Vanessa closed the door behind her and turned the lock. Not fast, not dramatic, deliberate. Relax, she said. If I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be conscious. That sent a chill straight through Evelyn's spine. Vanessa moved closer, stopping just short of the bed. Up close, she smelled expensive and controlled, like someone who never rushed because the world always waited for her. I'm not your enemy, Vanessa continued. In fact, I'm the only person in this city who can make your life easier. Evelyn laughed weakly. You mean quieter, smaller, invisible? Vanessa's lips curved slightly. You're smarter than Dominic ever gave you credit for. Evelyn's jaw tightened at the name. What do you want? Vanessa reached into her bag and placed a thin folder on the bedside table. Inside were copies of documents, medical debt summaries, school records, a pending CPS follow-up. And this, Vanessa added, sliding a second item forward, a cashier's check. The number made Evelyn's breath catch. Enough for a new start, Vanessa said. Another state, another name, good schools, no more night shifts. Evelyn stared at the paper, heart pounding. And the price? Vanessa leaned in, lowering her voice. You disappear. You never speak to Dominic Hale again. You never let those children anywhere near him. Evelyn's fingers trembled. You don't get to decide who their father is. Vanessa straightened, her tone sharpening. I do when their existence threatens a public alliance that keeps very powerful men calm. Evelyn met her gaze. This isn't help. It's a leash. For the first time, something flickered behind Vanessa's eyes. Irritation, not anger, offense. Take it, she said coldly, because the people circling you don't offer choices. I do. Evelyn closed her eyes. Images of her sons flashed through her mind, sleeping, laughing, trusting. When she opened them, her voice was steady. No. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. That's unfortunate, she said softly, because I was hoping you'd say yes. She picked up her bag and headed for the door. Oh, Vanessa added without turning around. I recorded this conversation. The door clicked shut, and Evelyn realized the help she'd just refused had never been real. It had been bait. They came for her 3 days later, not at night, not in the shadows. At 10:42 a.m., when Evelyn was sitting at the kitchen table helping Noah sound out words from a library book, and Liam was coloring a crooked dinosaur with a green crayon. The knock was firm this time. Official. Evelyn's stomach dropped before she even stood up. When she opened the door, 2 uniformed officers stood beside Marion Brooks. The clipboard was gone. In its place was a thin manila folder. Ms. Moore, Marion said evenly, we need to speak with you. Evelyn's hands went cold. About what? Marion stepped inside without waiting for permission. There's been a development. The officers followed. Evelyn felt the room tilt. One officer cleared his throat. We have a warrant to search the premises. For what? Evelyn asked, her voice barely holding. Evidence related to an ongoing investigation. Her heart slammed against her ribs. You can't just... They could, and they did. Drawers opened, cabinets searched. Even the kids' backpacks were emptied onto the couch. Liam started to cry. Noah stood frozen, clutching his book. "Mom," he whispered. Evelyn moved toward him, but Marion gently blocked her path. Then one of the officers stopped. "Ma'am?" he said, holding up a small sealed bag. "Can you explain this?" Inside was a flash drive. Evelyn stared at it in disbelief. "That's not mine!" Marion's eyes didn't soften. "It was found under your sink." "I've never seen that before," Evelyn said, panic rising fast. "Someone planted it." Marion's voice stayed calm. "We'll determine that later." The officer plugged the drive into his tablet. His expression changed instantly. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "this contains financial records tied to organized crime." The room went silent. Evelyn's knees nearly buckled. "I don't even know how to open files like that." Marion sighed, as if disappointed. "Ms. Moore, given your prior involvement in an unresolved case, this is very serious." Before Evelyn could respond, the other officer stepped forward. "We're placing you under arrest for possession of criminal evidence," Liam screamed. Noah grabbed her leg. "Mom, don't go!" Evelyn dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around them. "I'll be back," she whispered desperately. "I promise." As they pulled her away, she locked eyes with Marion. "You know this is wrong," Evelyn said. Marion hesitated, just for a second. Then she looked down at her folder. Outside, neighbors watched. Phones came out, and somewhere across the city, someone pressed send on a message that read, "She's contained." Evelyn was taken away in handcuffs, and the war moved into its next phase. Dominic Hale learned about Evelyn's arrest from a notification he wasn't supposed to receive. A secure message flashed across his phone while he sat in the back of his office, staring at a contract he had signed without reading. It came from a private channel, used only when something went catastrophically wrong. Asset detained, CPS involved, situation contained. Contained. The word hit him harder than any threat ever had. He stood so fast, his chair skidded backward. "Get Marcus on the line," he snapped to his assistant. "Now!" Minutes later, Dominic paced the length of the room as Marcus Hale's voice came through the speaker, tight and controlled. "They planted evidence," Marcus said without preamble. "A flash drive. Clean insertion. Professional." Dominic's jaw clenched. "By who?" There was a pause. Too long. "Caleb," Marcus said, "and someone close to you." The room felt suddenly smaller. Dominic's mind raced backward. Vanessa's calm questions, her sudden interest in child services, the way she'd stopped pushing after the DNA results came back negative. "Show me the lab report again," Dominic said. Marcus exhaled. "Dominic." "Show me." The file appeared on the screen. Dominic stared at it, forcing himself to slow down, to read like a man who survived by noticing details others missed. And then he saw it. The lab signature code. Wrong format. A private lab wouldn't make that mistake. Dominic felt a cold, sinking clarity spread through his chest. "It's fake." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "The DNA result was manipulated." Dominic closed his eyes. The twins' faces flashed through his mind. The way one of them had looked at him, curious, unafraid. The way Evelyn had stood between them and the street like a shield. "They're my kids," Dominic said. Marcus didn't answer. "They're my kids," Dominic repeated, his voice breaking. Silence filled the line. "You walk away now," Marcus said carefully, "and Evelyn goes to prison. The boys go into the system. Caleb wins." Dominic opened his eyes, something hard and irreversible settling behind them. "And if I don't?" "Then you burn your own house down," Marcus said. "Every deal, every protection, every favor." Dominic thought of the woman sitting in a cell for a crime she didn't commit, of two children asking why their mother hadn't come back. Good, Dominic said. He picked up his phone and typed a single message. Release everything. Across the city, a man who had ruled by fear smiled, unaware that the man he'd trained was about to turn that fear back on him. Because Dominic Hale had finally seen the truth, and he was done protecting the wrong people. The holding room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Evelyn sat on a metal bench with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor like it might offer answers. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, each second a reminder that time was moving without her children. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Liam's face twisted in fear, Noah's fingers slipping from hers as the officers pulled her away. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed in her head again and again. The door opened. Marion Brooks stepped inside, her expression carefully neutral, a thick folder tucked under her arm. Evelyn stood up immediately. "Where are my kids?" Marion didn't answer right away. She set the folder on the table, opened it, and took a seat as if this were just another meeting. "Ms. Moore," she said, "given the charges against you and the nature of the materials found in your home, the court has authorized temporary removal of the children." The words didn't register at first. "Temporary?" Evelyn repeated. "They've been placed in protective custody," Marion continued, "with a licensed foster family." Evelyn felt the air leave her lungs. "No, you can't do that. I haven't even been charged yet." Marion met her eyes, something almost like regret flickering there. "This is about safety." "My children are not in danger," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "They're only in danger because of people like you listening to the wrong voices." Marion looked down at the folder. "Ms. Moore, your past involvement in an unresolved criminal case, combined with recent evidence." "Planted evidence," Evelyn snapped. "You know it was planted." Silence stretched between them. Then Marion said quietly, "I know it's possible." Evelyn laughed, a broken sound. "Possible? That's all you have?" Marion closed the folder. "Until this is resolved, you will not have contact with the children." Something inside Evelyn broke. She dropped back onto the bench, her hands trembling violently now. Tears came fast, unstoppable, streaking down her face as she pressed her palms to her eyes. "I did everything right," she whispered. "I worked. I stayed quiet. I protected them." Marion stood. Sometimes doing everything right isn't enough. As she turned to leave, Evelyn looked up, eyes red and fierce. "You're wrong," she said. "This isn't protection. This is punishment." The door closed. Evelyn was alone again. And somewhere across the city, two little boys went to sleep without their mother for the first time. That was the moment Evelyn understood something terrifying. They weren't trying to scare her anymore. They were trying to erase her. Lucas Grant stood in the hallway outside the detention wing, staring at his phone as if it might change what it already showed him. It didn't. The DNA report glowed on the screen, clinical and unforgiving. 2 samples. 2 children. 1 biological father. Dominic Hale. Lucas closed his eyes. He had spent years chasing numbers, shell companies, offshore accounts. He had told himself this case was about corruption, about dismantling a criminal machine from the inside. But now the truth pressed against his ribs, heavy and personal. Blood didn't lie. He walked into the interview room where Dominic was already waiting, hands resting on the table, expression carved from stone. Men like Dominic didn't pace when they were afraid. They went still. Lucas sat down across from him and slid the report forward. "Read it carefully," Lucas said. Dominic picked it up. His eyes moved once, twice. Then his breath hitched. For a long moment, neither man spoke. "They're mine," Dominic said finally. It wasn't a question. It was a fact settling into place, rearranging his entire life in seconds. "Yes," Lucas replied. "Both of them." Dominic's jaw tightened. "You lied to me before." "The lab did," Lucas said evenly. "Not me." Dominic looked up sharply. "You knew." Lucas didn't deny it. I suspected. I needed proof before I moved. Dominic leaned back slowly, staring at the ceiling like it might crack open. Images rushed through his mind. Evelyn standing between the boys in the street, the fear in her eyes, the way she never once asked him for help. They took her kids, Dominic said, his voice low and dangerous. Because of me. Yes, Lucas said, and because of Caleb. Dominic's gaze snapped back. How do you know his name? Lucas hesitated. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out a faded photograph. Two teenage boys stood side by side, arms slung over each other's shoulders. Same eyes, same jawline. Dominic stared. My mother, Lucas said quietly, had an affair with your father. I didn't know until he died. I took my mother's name. You took his. The room went silent. We share blood, Lucas continued, and the man who raised you built an empire on destroying families like ours. Dominic's hands curled into fists. So what now? He asked. Lucas met his eyes. Now you choose. Keep protecting the system that made you powerful, or burn it down to save your children. Dominic stood. There is no choice, he said. And in that moment, the machine Caleb Voss had built began to turn against him, from the inside. Dominic Hale stood alone in the parking garage beneath his office tower, the concrete ceiling low and unforgiving. The city hummed above him, unaware that a decision was being made that would crack an empire down to its bones. His phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. They've scheduled the preliminary hearing. CPS will push for extended separation. You still have time to walk away. Dominic stared at the screen, then shut it off. Time. That was the lie everyone told powerful men, that there was always time, always another move, another delay. He leaned back against his car, the cold metal pressing through his suit, grounding him. For the first time in years, the noise in his head wasn't about profit margins or leverage. It was about two boys sleeping in a stranger's house, and a woman sitting in a cell because she trusted him once. Lucas's words echoed in his mind. Burn it down to save your children. Dominic pulled out a second phone, the one no one knew about. The one connected to everything he'd built and everything he'd hidden. He scrolled through names, accounts, codes. Each one represented protection, silence, blood. He dialed. Cancel all transfers, he said when the line picked up. Effective immediately. A pause. Confusion. That will trigger audits, the voice warned, and investigations. Good, Dominic replied. That's the point. He ended the call and dialed another number. Release the files, he said. All of them. The voice on the other end went very quiet. You know what that means. Yes, Dominic said. It means I stop running. He hung up. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a different ending. One where he kept his position. One where Evelyn disappeared quietly. One where his sons grew up never knowing his name. It would have been easier, but easy was how men like Caleb stayed in power. Dominic opened the car door and sat down, resting his head briefly against the steering wheel. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of what he was choosing to lose. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a single message from an unknown number. If you cross this line, there's no coming back. Dominic typed his response slowly. I'm not trying to come back. He hit send. Above him, the city lights flickered as if nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, accounts were freezing. Files were unlocking. Allies were turning quiet. And somewhere else in the city, a man who believed he controlled every outcome felt the first crack form beneath his feet. Dominic started the engine. He wasn't choosing power anymore. He was choosing his children. And that choice was about to cost him everything. The first arrest happened at dawn. Dominic watched it unfold from the back seat of an unmarked car. Rain streaking down the windows as federal agents moved in with quiet precision. No sirens, no shouting, just doors opening, hands raised, lives collapsing in silence. This was how empires really fell. Not with explosions, but with paperwork. His phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from men who had sworn loyalty, men who now realized the protection they paid for had vanished overnight. What did you do? You froze everything. You're dead if this doesn't stop. Dominic didn't reply. Across the city, warehouses were sealed, accounts locked, shell companies flagged. Names Caleb Voss had buried for decades were suddenly breathing again under fluorescent lights and federal scrutiny. Lucas sat beside Dominic, eyes fixed forward. Once this goes public, there's no undoing it. Dominic nodded. I know. You'll lose everything. Dominic exhaled slowly. I already did. His mind wasn't on money or territory. It was on a small visiting room with plastic chairs. On two boys who would ask why their mother hadn't come back yet. On Evelyn's face the last time he'd seen her, bruised, furious, unbroken. At noon, the news broke. Anonymous leaks, financial irregularities, corruption tied to legitimate businesses. The headlines didn't name Dominic yet, but they would. Caleb Voss was still quiet. That worried Lucas. He won't run, Lucas said. Men like him never do. He'll try to flip the board. As if summoned, Dominic's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Caleb's voice came through smooth and amused. You always were dramatic, Dominic. You taught me, Dominic replied. A chuckle. I taught you control. This is suicide. Dominic looked out at the gray skyline. This is accountability. You think they'll thank you? Caleb asked. The system will eat you alive. Maybe, Dominic said, but it won't touch my kids. Silence stretched. Then Caleb spoke again, colder now. You've made an enemy you can't outrun. Dominic ended the call. Within the hour, warrants were signed. Task forces mobilized. Caleb's world began to shrink. Dominic stepped out of the car as agents moved past him, weapons lowered, confidence high. For the first time in his life, he wasn't protected. He was exposed. And strangely, he felt lighter. Because the man he was becoming, the man willing to burn his own throne to protect two children, was finally someone he could live with, even if it cost him everything else. Vanessa Cole realized she had been abandoned when no one answered her calls. Not Dominic, not Caleb, not the political fixer who had promised her protection. She stood in the marble bathroom of her penthouse, staring at her reflection as her phone buzzed again, this time with news alerts she couldn't stop. Federal task force moves on multiple financial entities. Unnamed sources confirm internal betrayal. Vanessa's breath quickened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had calculated every angle. Dominic's weakness, Evelyn's silence, Caleb's need for control. She had offered herself as a bridge, a clean public face for a dirty alliance. And now, the bridge was burning from both ends. Her phone finally rang. Caleb Voss. She answered immediately. You said you had this handled. A pause. Too long. You were never part of the plan, Caleb replied coolly. You were insurance. Vanessa's stomach dropped. You told me. I told you what you needed to hear, he cut in. Right now, I need distance. You used me, she said, her voice shaking. I took risks for you. And you failed, Caleb replied. You let Hale turn sentimental. The line went dead. Vanessa stared at the phone in disbelief. Minutes later, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find two men in dark suits. Not police, not security. Men she recognized from Caleb's circle. We need you to come with us, one said. Vanessa stepped back. I have immunity, agreements. The man didn't smile. Those don't exist anymore. Her heart pounded as she realized the truth. Caleb wasn't protecting her. He was sacrificing her. In a black SUV speeding through traffic, Vanessa's mind raced. Every promise, every whispered assurance replayed itself, hollow now. She had believed power meant safety. She had been wrong. At a warehouse near the river, The SUV stopped. The doors opened. Then sirens. Red and blue lights flooded the night. Federal agents swarmed in, weapons raised. Vanessa gasped as she was pulled from the vehicle, hands yanked behind her back, cold cuffs snapping shut around her wrists. As agents read her rights, she saw one familiar face across the chaos. Dominic Hale. He didn't look at her with anger. He looked at her with finality. In that moment, Vanessa understood her punishment. She hadn't just lost Dominic. She had lost her future, and she had no one left to blame but herself. The courtroom was colder than Evelyn expected, not in temperature, but in feeling. She sat at the defense table in a borrowed blazer, hands folded tightly together, eyes fixed on the seal of the court behind the judge. The room smelled faintly of paper, old wood, and nerves. Every sound echoed, the shuffle of feet, the scrape of chairs, the soft cough of strangers who had come to watch a story unravel. This was no longer just her life, it was a public reckoning. Across the aisle, prosecutors arranged their files with quiet confidence. Behind them, reporters filled the benches, pens poised, eyes sharp. Somewhere in the room, she could feel the weight of 1,000 opinions forming before she spoke a word. Then the doors opened. Dominic Hale walked in, flanked by federal agents. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Evelyn's breath caught, but she didn't look at him. Not yet. She was afraid that if she did, she might remember the man he used to be, instead of the man he had chosen to become. The judge called the session to order. Lucas Grant was the first witness. He spoke calmly, methodically, laying out a timeline that snapped into place like pieces of a puzzle long kept apart. Shell companies, fabricated evidence, the falsified DNA report, the planted flash drive. Every sentence stripped another layer of lies from the case. Then came the moment Evelyn hadn't prepared for. "Ms. Moore," the prosecutor said, turning toward her, "did you knowingly possess any criminal financial records?" Evelyn stood. Her legs trembled, but her voice didn't. "No," she said. "I was targeted because I knew too much, and because I had something they could use against me, my children." A hush fell over the room. "And the children's father?" the prosecutor asked. Evelyn finally looked at Dominic. He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "He's here," she said simply. Gasps followed. Before the judge could speak, Dominic stood. "I waive my right to silence," he said, "and I submit myself fully to this court." The room erupted. Dominic turned toward the bench. "Everything they have on her was meant for me. If there is guilt, it's mine." For the first time since her arrest, Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief. Validation. The judge struck the gavel, calling for order. But the damage was done. The truth was no longer buried. It was standing in the open. And it was impossible to ignore. Caleb Voss was arrested at 6:07 a.m. Not in a dramatic raid. Not surrounded by chaos. He was standing in his kitchen, wearing a pressed white shirt, pouring coffee as if it were any other morning, when the doorbell rang. Twice. He didn't flinch. Caleb had always believed that panic was for people without contingency plans. He opened the door calmly and found 6 federal agents waiting, weapons holstered, faces expressionless. "Caleb Voss," one of them said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and multiple counts of financial fraud." Caleb smiled faintly. "That's quite a list." They stepped aside as agents entered the house, spreading out with quiet efficiency. Laptops were seized, phones bagged, hard drives removed from walls he had personally reinforced. For the first time in decades, Caleb's world was being touched by hands that didn't answer to him. As he was led outside in cuffs, neighbors peeked through curtains, cameras clicked, someone shouted his name. Caleb lifted his chin. He still believed in control. That belief shattered 3 hours later. In an interrogation room downtown, the screen across from him flickered to life. A single video file played. Vanessa Cole. Her voice was unsteady but clear as she laid out everything. Payments, instructions, names. The planted evidence, the falsified DNA test, the order to contain Evelyn Moore by any legal means necessary. Caleb's smile disappeared. "That's coerced," he said sharply. The agent across from him didn't blink. "It's corroborated." Another file opened. Lucas Grant's financial trail. Offshore accounts Caleb had forgotten existed. Transfers that traced directly back to him, timed precisely with the events surrounding Evelyn's disappearance 6 years earlier. Caleb leaned back slowly. For the first time, he felt it. Fear. "This doesn't end with me," he said. "Men more powerful than you." The agent cut him off. "Already talking." Silence swallowed the room. By the afternoon, the indictment was unsealed. By evening, Caleb's name led every news cycle. The man who had built his empire by pulling strings from the shadows was dragged into the light, stripped of mystery, reduced to evidence numbers and mugshots. And somewhere across the city, Evelyn Moore held her sons again, unaware that the man who had tried to erase her was finally being erased himself. Caleb Voss had always believed he was untouchable. He was wrong, because the truth didn't just catch up to him, it crushed him. The sentence came down on a quiet Tuesday morning. Evelyn heard about it from a television mounted high on the wall of the Family Services office. The volume turned low, but the captions scrolling clearly across the screen. Former business executive Dominic Hale accepts plea deal, forfeits assets. She stared at the words longer than she meant to. Across the room, Liam and Noah sat on the floor with a box of donated toys, arguing over a plastic fire truck. Their laughter rose and fell, careless and bright, completely unaware of how much had been lost so they could sit there safely. Dominic Hale would not be walking free as the man he once was. The plea agreement was precise, brutal, necessary. He surrendered every company tied to Caleb Voss's network, properties, accounts, influence. In exchange, he avoided a trial that would have dragged on for years and spared his children from growing up with his name splashed across every headline. The judge had been clear. "You chose cooperation over control," she had said. "That choice will follow you for the rest of your life." Dominic accepted it without flinching. Later that day, Evelyn sat across from him in a small private visitation room. No glass, no guards hovering, just 2 chairs and a table scarred by years of other people's regret. He looked different, not weaker, but stripped down. No tailored suit, no watch, just a man in a plain shirt with tired eyes. "I won't be able to give them much," Dominic said quietly. "No money, no protection, no legacy." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. "Good," she said. He looked up, surprised. "They don't need an empire," she continued. "They need a father who shows up." Dominic nodded once, swallowing hard. "I can do that," he said, "if you let me." Evelyn thought of the nights she had spent afraid, the years of silence, the cost of surviving alone. Then she thought of the courtroom, of him standing up when he didn't have to, of him choosing ruin so she wouldn't lose her children. "They'll decide," she said finally. "Not me." Outside the building, the city moved on. New scandals replaced old ones. Names faded. Dominic Hale stepped into a future without power, without certainty. But for the first time, the ground beneath him was honest. And for Evelyn Moore, that was enough. Because some losses weren't punishments. They were the proof that the right choice had finally been made. The morning felt different, not brighter, not easier, just quieter in a way Evelyn Moore hadn't known her life could be. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the small house they'd moved into on the edge of Queens, touching the kitchen table where 2 bowls of cereal sat abandoned. Outside, birds argued over something invisible. Inside, the twins laughed as they chased each other down the hallway, their feet pounding against the floor like proof of life. Evelyn stood at the sink, hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching them. For the first time in years, no one was watching her back. No unknown numbers. No sudden knocks. No systems circling like predators pretending to protect. She breathed in slowly. "Mom!" Noah called. "He's here!" She didn't need to ask who. Dominic stood on the front porch, hands in his pockets, shoulders squared like a man bracing for judgment. No suits, no guards, no power trailing behind him, just a simple jacket and nervous eyes. Evelyn opened the door. The boys stopped short, staring at him. Not afraid, just curious. "Hi," Dominic said softly. Liam studied him. "You're the man from the pictures." Dominic nodded. "I am." A long moment passed. Then Noah walked forward and took Dominic's hand, small fingers wrapping around his without hesitation. "You can come in," he said, "but Mom makes the rules." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. Dominic smiled, really smiled, for the first time she'd ever seen. "That sounds fair." They spent the afternoon in the backyard. No speeches, no promises. Dominic helped build a crooked birdhouse that fell apart twice. The boys laughed until their sides hurt. Evelyn watched from the steps, something warm settling in her chest where fear used to live. Later, as the sky turned gold, Dominic sat beside her. "I can't give you the life I once promised," he said quietly. Evelyn looked at him. "I don't want that life." He nodded. "I can give you honesty, patience, and every day I have left." She didn't answer right away. Then she reached for his hand. "That's what I deserve," she said. That night, after the boys fell asleep, Evelyn stood in the doorway of their room and realized the truth. She hadn't won money, she hadn't gained status, she had gained safety, she had gained love that stayed. She had gained a future built on choice, not fear. And for the first time, that was more than enough. So, the story has come to an end. And if you're still here with us right now, truly still here, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a quiet but real way. Maybe it wasn't the crime or the twists. Maybe it was the feeling of being pushed to the edge, of losing almost everything and still choosing to stand up for what matters. This story reminds us of a simple but powerful truth from Stoic philosophy. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, as Marcus Aurelius once said. Evelyn couldn't control the system, the lies, or the cruelty aimed at her, but she controlled her integrity, her love for her children, and her refusal to become bitter. Dominic learned another Stoic lesson the hard way. What is not right should not be done. What is not true should not be said. He lost power, money, and status, but gained something far rarer, the chance to live honestly. Healing doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like choosing courage over fear and values over comfort. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that heal, not just entertain.